About 2 weeks ago, I posted a video about Nile Niami. He's a real estate developer out of LA. He's responsible for building a bunch of super high-end spec homes out there, and his most recent creation is a 105,000 square foot mega mansion that he calls The One. That video that I posted got a significant amount of attention and views, and along with that, it came with a significant amount of comments and new subscribers. When I was scrolling through the comments, I noticed there was a common theme where a lot of people are under the impression that the bank has already taken the house back from Nile due to him not paying on his loans. In today's video, I'm going to address that misconception, and I'm going to talk about the true current financial state of this Bel Air spec mansion, The One. If you're new to my channel, my name is Scott. I'm a real estate investor out of Arizona, and I primarily focus on smaller residential house flips, but I have done spec builds just like Nile is doing out in LA, so I have a really good understanding of how the financial side works on these deals. So let's get into it, but as always, if you wouldn't mind, if you could really quick just hit the like button down below for me, because that'll really help to support this video and my channel. And also, if you're into real estate related content, think about hitting subscribe as well, because I'm posting new videos every week and they're all themed around real estate topics like this one or my own personal experience investing in real estate. Alright, so in case you guys didn't see my last video and you have no idea what I'm talking about here, I'm going to give you a 30-second crash course on Nile Niami and this project, The One. Nile is an old film producer turned real estate developer, and he's been building luxury spec homes in LA for about 20 years now. Over the years, it has not been uncommon for him to build homes and then list them for sale from anywhere from $25 million all the way up to $100 million. The project that's getting the most amount of attention lately, though, is his latest spec build project in Bel Air, and it's one that he's nicknamed The One. He has been working on this build for 10 years now. It is a 105,000 square foot house with 21 bedrooms, 42 bathrooms, and a bunch of insane amenities like a bowling alley, a movie theater, a salon, a nightclub, and like 7 swimming pools. Nile recently did an interview with another YouTuber who goes by Producer Michael, and at the end something interesting came out when he exposed that he's actually in default on the loans that he took out in order to build this house. The home was originally projected to be listed for sale for $500 million, but the rumor lately is that people are putting pressure on him to list it for a much more realistic price of around $340 million. So now that we've got that out of the way, let's talk about how loans on spec builds usually work, and then we'll talk about what kind of debt Nile has found himself in on this crazy project. When you're building a spec home, you usually find land that has an old house sitting on it, you tear that house down, you build a big beautiful house in its place, and then you sell that house for a profit. So a common way that the loan side of it works is that you get a loan initially on the land itself, and that's usually a lower interest rate loan for a longer term because it takes a few years to tear down a house and build a new one in its place. And then you get a second loan, which is called a construction loan, and this is one that you'll usually take draws on over the course of the build, which means you only take money out whenever you need it to fund different stages of the project, like the concrete or the framing or the plumbing or the electrical or the finishes or the landscape. When you get to the end of your spec build project, it's not unusual for you to have a ton of debt on your plate, but the goal is that you make enough money when you sell the house to be able to pay your lender off, pay them all the interest that you owe them, and then hopefully you've got a good chunk of money left over as your profit. That profit number is going to vary quite a bit, and there's a lot of factors that drive it, but in general, spec home builders should aim to make about 20% if they're doing projects like Nile Niami is, which means that if he gets anywhere near the price that he's looking for, he stands to make well over $100 million on this deal. The issue is that he'll never likely get that price of $500 million because both the real estate agents and the people that he borrowed money from are putting pressure on him to list it for a much lower price. According to various reports, Nile has a total of $110 million in debt on this property, including both principal and interest. It all started back in 2018 when he took out a loan from Hankey Investment Company for $82.5 million, which was supposed to be repaid in full by October 2020. Needless to say, the loan was not paid back in October 2020 because the house wasn't even finished in October 2020. Because of the loan hitting its due date in October and not being paid in full at that time as he originally agreed to, the lender filed what's called a notice of default, which is technically the first step of the foreclosure process. This is very problematic for Nile because this means that if he does not pay his loan back in full within around 90 days or renegotiate the terms of that loan with the lender, then he'll most certainly be facing a foreclosure with them, which means the bank is going to be allowed to take the house back and then relist it for sale at whatever price they want. And this is exactly where there's that misconception going around about the property. See, a lot of people are under the impression that the lender has already foreclosed on Nile, but in fact they've only started the foreclosure process. When a lender files a notice of default, a lender is basically just saying, hey, you've breached the contract contract and you didn't pay us back as agreed, so we're going to start the process now of taking the home back from you. But the reality is the foreclosure process takes months or even more in some states, so while Nile is under some extreme pressure to sell this house, he has not lost it to foreclosure yet. From here, Nile really only has a few options. First and most ideally is that he just simply sells the house. If he found a buyer right now for, let's say, $350 million, he would be able to pay his lender the $110 million that he owes them. He would have about $20 million in commissions and closing costs that he needs to pay, so that would leave him with about $220 million left to go into his own pocket. That would obviously be a dream scenario for Nile, but my opinion is that it's very unlikely that a buyer is going to come along for this house at this point, because there's only a handful of people on this planet who can actually afford a house of this caliber, and chances are they've already heard of the house and they've decided it's not a good fit for them. Option 2 is that he just simply renegotiates the terms with his existing lender. He would just need to come to an agreement with the lender where they gave him a little bit more time to sell the place without foreclosing on him. This option is okay, but still not great, because if he stays stubborn and he goes back to his $500 million price tag, he's almost sure not to sell this house at that price point, which means that his lender ultimately is going to go right back to trying to foreclose on him 6 or 12 months down the road. Then there's option 3, where he finds another lender to bail him out of his situation. This just means that he needs to find some other lender or billionaire friend who's willing to help bail him out of his situation by writing him a $110 million check that he can then use to pay off Hanky Capital. But this scenario also doesn't do a whole lot for him other than bail him out of the foreclosure process and buy him a little bit more time, but ultimately he really just needs to sell this house. To wrap this all up, I'll give my thoughts on what I think is most likely to happen here, even though your guess is as good as mine. Nile has stated that he's got this dream of turning this house into an event venue to get him out of this looming foreclosure, but my opinion is that there's no way that that's going to happen, because I don't think that he'll ever get the financial backing that would be required to make that happen. I also think that since he has some other unrelated projects that are scheduled to be sold soon, he might be in a position where he's flush with cash at some point in the near future, and that would put him in a position where he's able to pay off Hanky Capital, get himself out of foreclosure, and that'll buy him like 6 months or a year in order to sell this house. Then we'll likely see him shoot for the moon with his price at first, but after a bunch of price drops, I think this house will probably trade somewhere around $250 million. We know that Nile has $110 million worth of debt on the house, but it's hard telling how much of his own personal money that he put into it, but something tells me that if he sells the place for $250 million, still after he pays his commissions and closing costs, he'll be walking away with a pretty healthy payday. Regardless of how it unfolds, I'm sure it'll be interesting and fascinating to follow, so I'll make sure to be posting updates about it here on my channel as they come out. So with that said, just one more reminder to hit the subscribe button down below if you're not already a subscriber, because I'm posting new videos every week and I'd love to have you along for the ride. And one last reminder to hit the like button as well, because that really does help my channel out a lot. But that's all I've got for you guys this time, so until next time, see ya!